Do you remember the first deal that you ever did? Do you remember feeling nervous? Do you remember feeling excited? Like, oh my gosh, is this going to work? Or what's going to happen? Or you're thinking of all the worst case scenarios? Well, I got 3 videos here. I'm going to show you. These are videos I filmed about a year or 2 years ago. And we pulled them out of the vault. And these were videos originally done for some ads, but we have some longer forms of them. And I thought, let's put them together in a little video for you guys. And the first one is going to be about the very first it's actually the very first wholesaling deal that I did. It was a cash deal, a wholesale deal. It was a property about 45 minutes out of town, way out of the sticks. And I was so nervous, I made every mistake possible. I didn't think you could actually do deals. I didn't think that this business was, I mean, I did, but it couldn't happen. Can you really wholesale a deal and make $5,000, $10,000, $20,000? And can it really happen to me? Right? The second video is about my very first lease option deal that I did. It's a creative way to buy and sell properties. And this is a property we sold on a lease option and had a great tenant buyer in there, and we made a lot of money on this deal. And then the third deal is kind of tragic. This was our dream home that we bought, and we lost it to a short sale. And almost foreclosure, we did a short sale instead. So this is my first foreclosure story of one of my houses. This is when the market crashed back in 2008, and so a lot of lessons learned from each of these deals. But I think that all of the success that I've had in real estate, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm here to tell you it's okay. You can make mistakes and still make money in this business, but you can't make excuses, right? You can make excuses or you can make money, but you can't make both. And I think maybe one of the reasons why I've had the success that I've had is because I'm willing to make mistakes. I'm willing to have failure, and I learn from my failures. I pick myself back up, and I press on. I never quit. So if you get anything out of this, I hope you understand that. I hope you understand that, sometimes your mess can be turned into a message. I want you to fail forward fast. I don't want you sitting on the sidelines and just watching everybody else compete. I want you in the game. I want you in there. And be okay with making mistakes. Be okay with failure, because that's how you learn. That's the best way to learn. And everybody makes mistakes. If we see anybody in business, they have failed many, many times. And in fact, most of the most successful people have probably failed more than they have succeeded. But their wins have been big. And they win big because they stay in the game. They're consistent. They never quit. They never give up. So enjoy these videos. Hey guys, how you doing? Joe McCall here. I got something special for you. Have you ever heard of Warrenton, Missouri? So this is a place where I did my very first wholesaling deal, and I'm excited about it because this is actually the first time I've ever even been to this house. I was so nervous, and I'm still actually nervous today coming here to look at this house, because for years and years, I was a professional student. I'd bought course after course after course, and I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to actually do a deal. I was afraid of making so many mistakes. And this is a house that I bought for $63,000, sold it for $79,000 the next day. It's a 3-family, actually. It's a multi-family. This was a house that the seller called me on a postcard. I was afraid to answer the phone. She called me like 3 or 4 times, and she kept on leaving messages and telling me where the house was. Like, I don't buy houses out there, When I finally did talk to the lady, I said, I just don't want to buy it. And she begged me. I said, you should just list it with the realtor on the MLS. And she said, no, I just want to get rid of it. She was a tired landlord. I asked her to send me some pictures. She said, I don't know what it's worth. I said, well, I'll give you $63,000 for it. I just picked that number out of the air. And she said, okay. And I started freaking out. I started calling my friends and other people I knew in the business. I said, what do I do next? And they said, stick a sign in the yard. I had a friend put a sign on in the front yard here. And we sold this house the next day for $79,000. So I bought it for $63,000, sold it for $79,000, made a $16,000 profit on this thing. And I made every mistake possible. I was so nervous, when the seller called me. I wanted to meet her in a public place. I didn't even meet her here. I met her at a YMCA about an hour away, closer to where I live. And I gave her a contract that had all kinds of contingencies in it. And she signed it without even looking at it. I made tons of mistakes on this deal. One of them, I gave the seller a $2,000 earnest money deposit in cash when I signed the contract with her. I didn't know any better, right? But here's the thing, the reason why I did this deal, I decided I'm gonna start taking action. I bought one more course. I said, I'm gonna do what this guy says to do. I'm not gonna change anything. So I sent out his postcards to his lists. I didn't like the contracts, but I did it anyway. I just didn't question anything. I stopped complicating things. I just kept it really, really simple. I just followed the plan A to B, B to C. And then I stopped asking what if, and I started asking what next. And it's just cool to know that the first deal I actually did was in a virtual market, in a small market. Through all the mistakes, I did my first deal and I made some money and I couldn't believe it. Like, oh my gosh, this stuff actually works. And then fast forward a year from then, in 2009, I quit my job and have never looked back since. Since then, I've made millions of dollars in the real estate investing business. And it all started with this house. So guys, why am I bringing you here? Listen, this is the first wholesale deal that I ever did. And it was a deal in a small town that I'd never been to before. I didn't have any buyers. I did this deal virtually. And this is actually 13 years later, the first time that I've ever actually even seen this house. Hey guys, how you doing? Joe here. I got a special treat for you. I'm actually at the first house I ever did a lease option on. Let me rewind a little bit. We actually lived in Kansas City and my company was transferring me a lot. And so we just bought a house. They transferred us. We decided, well, let's rent the house out. And it was the worst experience ever, right? The tired landlord. Well, I was a tired landlord after just a couple months. And the tenant would call us every week for something that needed to be fixed, something that was broken. They were late every single month. So I remember at the time I said, nah, we're never going to own any rental properties. I never want to be a landlord. Fast forward a few years, we actually bought this house. We had one kid. We have 4 now. We were living in the house. It was great. But as we started having more kids, we decided, we need to get a bigger house as we wanted to move. But we'd only been there a couple of years. We didn't have much equity in it. So we thought, maybe we don't have to sell it right now. Maybe we could rent it out. And I remember thinking, no, I don't want to be a landlord. We're never going to rent a property again. So I read a book by an investor called The Secrets of a Millionaire Landlord. And he had a chapter in there where you can actually lease a property to somebody who wants to buy it in the future. So a lease option is where you lease a property with the option to buy it in the future. And he said the benefit of this is now as a lease option, you can put a tenant buyer in the home who's going to treat it nicer like it's their own property. So we thought, all right, let's do a lease option on this house. I wanted to test the market to see if there was any kind of interest in this thing. So I actually, on Christmas Eve, I had to put an ad in Craigslist, got tons and tons of calls from people that were wanting to lease option this house. We bought another house and we put a tenant buyer in this home. And they were in a situation where they wanted to buy a house, but just couldn't. And they decided that they were gonna lease it for a little while and then buy it. But the tenant buyer stayed here for 7 years and never missed a rent payment and never called me once to fix anything. In fact, when we got the house back after he eventually moved, the house was in better condition than it was when we actually left the house. So it was in great shape. That's why I love lease options, because now you get to lease it to somebody who's going to take better care of the home than a regular tenant. So then fast forward a few more years, he put another tenant buyer in it. They couldn't buy it. Then we eventually sold it. But here's the crazy thing. We sold this house and made $170,000 profit on this property. And this is why I love lease options, because there are 3 profit centers in a lease option deal. There's cash now, cash flow, and cash later. And I talk more about that in my class. It's a great way to get all of the benefits of owning rental property without the typical landlord headache. So this is a great example of the lease option. You could do a lease option as an investment property, so you can buy houses with lease options. And if you have an existing home, you can sell a house on a lease option. There's a lot of different ways that we can make money doing lease option deals. Hey guys, Joe here, and I'm going to take you a little drive down memory lane right now. This was a house that we lived in, and when the market crashed, I lost almost everything. I remember one time I was at work and I got a phone call from my wife who was pregnant. She said, hey Joe, the sheriff just knocked on the door and gave us a foreclosure notice. Man, that was one of the darkest, hardest days of my life. I remember praying, God, how can we get out of this? My back was against the wall. I was hemorrhaging cash. We were losing this house to foreclosure. None of our friends, none of our family knew. None of the neighbors knew what we were going through. But you know what? Sometimes God turns our mess into a message. And this is actually where I started doing deals. I bought one more course and I said, I'm just going to do what this guy says to do. I'm not going to change anything. And I actually started doing deals right after this happened. I look at this, it's real sad, but it was also a blessing at the same time, because it forced me to get off my butt. It forced me to actually start doing what I was learning, I just trusted the system, started making money doing deals. You make your profit when you buy. And with this house, we didn't buy it right. We bought it at the height of the market. We took on too much debt. If I would have had a coach, he would have helped us avoid the mistakes that we made on this house. A lot of you watching this, you've made mistakes and you've had failures in the past, and it's hard to talk about. It's easy to get emotional and sad. But listen, don't ever let your failures define you. Take the failures and the mistakes that you've made in the past and build on them. Learn what not to do next time. This was a $100,000 seminar that I went to. And guess what? I'll never make those mistakes again, because it was here that I actually started doing deals. It was after this massive failure where I actually started making money in real estate for the first time. And don't let people define you by your failures. Don't define yourself by your failures. Pick up the pieces and move on. Don't quit. Don't give up, because you too can start doing deals and start making money in real estate. It's not that hard. Don't make it any more difficult than it needs to be. So go make it happen.